Hello folks and welcome back to the channel. Now, I've had a brilliant day's fishing here. I'm at Shardlow Marina, a venue that's probably 40 minutes from my home. And at this time of year, silverfish pack into these sort of venues. Obviously the rivers are usually in flood, they're barren, you know, fish are susceptible to predators on the rivers, and they just pack into these marinas under the cover of the boats. The water's maybe a little bit warmer, you know, the fish are just here. And the swim I've chosen, you're very limited for swims here at this particular place, but the swim that I'm sitting on, it's about 9 or 10 foot deep, really deep. I didn't expect it to be as deep as it is. And I actually came with the view of loose feeding bait. But I just want to talk to you about how the session has panned out, because it's turned into a totally different day than what I expected it to be. It's been all about topping up with ground bait. So it's all been about the big pot and going out, feeding a bit of bait, catching maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 fish off that bit of bait, and then refeeding. So the start of the session, I've got 2 mixes with me. One is, it's a heavy mix, but I'd say it's on the dry side of damp. And this has been my attractor. That's what I've been calling my attractor. With this, I've hardly been squeezing it. You know, sometimes I've been feeding it loose on the surface, but what I want to do with this is almost create a bit of a cloud in the water. That's for attracting fish into the swim. And then, when I've got the fish there and I've got them feeding, I've got this mix, which is, I mean, it's a claggy mess now because I've been adding all sorts of bits and bobs to it. But this is the same mix, but it's mixed with a little bit extra water, and it's, when I squeeze it together, it's almost like clay or putty. And that's been the perfect carrier for my bait. So, like I say, once the fish have arrived in the swim, I don't really need to feed this drier ground bait, because all that's going to do, especially in 9 or 10 foot of water, is cause me problems. I'm going to have fish at all sorts of different depths. This has been the mix of pinning them onto the bottom. Now, ground bait mix in itself, it's frenzied hemp black, a bag of frenzied hemp black to half a bag of bream original. It's a fantastic mix that I use on loads of different venues, whether I'm in Ireland or, you know, rivers in this country, or even abroad in Europe when we go away. A really good mix that is dark, so fish feel happy to sit over the top of it, and it's something that I like. It's like a non-offensive mix. It's not going to put any species off. So skimmers, roach. We've had some beautiful roach today. We've had, you know, a couple of really nice perch as well. Those fish are going to feed happily over the top of it. So I'm going to put in another ball just while I speak to you, because we've been catching loads of fish. These fish want feeding. All I'm doing, you see there, I've got my casters, probably, I don't know, 30 casters there. I'm not going to count them, I'm not that sad. But all I'm going to do is, in this putty mix, I'm going to put them in the middle, and I'm just going to create a ball around those casters. So I'm going to just try and use almost like as small an amount of ground bait as possible, just to get those casters to the bottom. So the fish want the casters, I'm pinning the fish to the bottom, and then I can present my rig over the top. I mean, we've been getting loads of bites today. The fish obviously want some bait, so we've been quite busy with the cups. And you might think it's a little bit slower to keep doing this, but you're only doing it after maybe every half a dozen fish. So it's not actually slowing me down too much. Now, usually, the first couple of fish you get when you've just put a little ball in, especially today, have been a slightly smaller stamp, but we'll see what we can do for you on this occasion. I'm just going to try and catch you a fish or two, just to show you what we've been doing today. I'm not going to bother talking about rigs or anything like that. It's just all about the feeding and just getting the feeding right. You know, anyone that watched the underwater stuff that Lee Carrier and I shot for the Edge website will know that quite often there's loads of fish in your swim, and it's just about you controlling them and getting them to feed in the right way. So we've got quite a few smaller fish up in the water at the minute, and what I want to do is just try and bomb my rig down to where my bait's been bombed down to. We're trying to get everything down to the bottom as fast as possible, because that's where the fish are easy to catch, and quite often that's where we're going to catch our bigger fish as well. You know, single or double caster has been the bait, and generally the best way of finding out what to feed is try it with your hook bait. So, you know, I'm feeding a lot of casters now in that little ball of ground bait. But earlier on in the session, I mean, we had a really cold night last night. I didn't expect it to be as good as it has been. So earlier on in the session, we were fishing with pinkies and a few maggots in the ground bait. A bite straight away, just as the rig settled. See if we can actually hook him this time. And then as we progressed through the session, we started feeding more and more bait and more bigger baits. So casters came into play. There's even a little bit of chopworm in that ground bait. You know, trying to attract quality fish as the session wore on. And as we were putting those sort of baits on the hook, that tells us those fish want that bait. There's plenty of those fish in the swim that are going to eat that bait. So that's what we're feeding now. You know, look, quite a few casters, and it's just a case of reading the swim and just reading when to top up. We've been getting maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 fish from each little ball of ground bait. There we go, nice roach, probably, I don't know, 2 ounce, something like that. He's one of the smaller fish we've had today. See if we can get another one for you. See if we can go 2 in 2. Like I say, we're not going to dwell on the rigs and how we're laying the float in and all that sort of thing. We're just talking about our feeding and literally controlling the fish. A lot of people think roach are a really finicky fish, and you need a lot of finesse for roach. You need to really think about feeding little and often, but quite often when they're in your swim, you've just got to catch them and control them. You know, they'll clear you out of your bait really quickly. They'll feed at all sorts of different depths, and you'll just have a nightmare with them. So today we are controlling the fish. We're keeping them where we want them. You know, we're not letting them control me at all. It's a little bit, this tactic is a little bit like the hare and the tortoise. You might think it's nice to be busy throwing bait in or catapulting bait in all the time and laying your rig in, but doing it this way, it's a little bit slower, but we rarely miss a bite, and the fish just tend to be that slightly better stamp. So you're not having to obviously be as busy to catch the same weight. Well, I say we've had some beautiful fish today. It'd be nice if we catch one of those slightly bigger fish. There we go, 2 in 2. I'm happy with that. It's not a big kipper like some of the fish we had earlier, but he's a decent fish nonetheless. Little 2 ouncer. So it's not something I do a lot of the time when I'm pole fishing, but feeder fishing I use 2 mixes all the time. And you know, using them pole fishing, it just makes sense. One for attracting the fish, one for pinning them down where they're easy to catch. It's something that, you know, it's worked really well for me today. Maybe you want to try it next time you're out on the bank. Tight line.